السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين متابعين بإحسان ليوم الدين أما بعد. So this is, to be honest, I lost track which number of classes this is. This is class number...
In description of Jannah or
Description of Jannah.
Fourth.
So fourth class description of Jannah or third? Third.
Oh, third, okay.
Third class description of Jannah. And then overall it's... Overall
like
journey.
18 or something.
Okay. So we're so this entire segment for the past, I guess, few weeks we've been talking about the description of Jannah, and then we mentioned we're going to take it as slow as we need, so we can have a better description of it, because it's more of the favorable aspect to ask Allah Subhanahu wa Taala to allow us to enter Jannah with the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. Ameen. And so we reach, I think, if I'm not mistaken, to the description of the trees of Jannah. Is that right? People who were here last week? Fragrance? No, we did talk about the fragrance, right? No, it's not a large section. But in terms of fragrance, we talked about the different ahadith of the Prophet ﷺ when he mentioned couple of them, that the fragrance of Jannah is a distance of 70 aman, right? That's one narration. Yeah. The other narration that it is masirat 40 aman, right? So one is a walking distance of 70 years and the other one is a walking distance of 40 years. Yeah. And they're just talking about the fragrance of how deep it is. And we talked about how Imam ibn Hajar al-Asqalani had discussed that, what seems to be a contradiction. Yeah. We discussed that, right? All right, so that's done with the fragrance aspect. So the next part I think we stopped at was we were going to talk about the trees and the fruits of Jannah, inshallah, followed by the birds and the mounts or the animals that are found in Jannah. So if I remember correctly, this is where we stopped. I'm just double checking. Is that right? Okay, so in terms of the trees, obviously we know from the different verses from the Quran, obviously Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had mentioned that there's trees and there's different fruits. Most people would remember Surah Ar-Rahman, right? A lot of them is sometimes mentioned in these things. For example, فِيهِمَا فَاكِهَةٌ وَنَخْلٌ وَرُمَّانٌ, right? So there's fruits in it. Nakhl is palm trees, rumman is pomegranates. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, also talking about أصحاب اليمين وأصحاب اليمين وأصحاب اليمين في سدر المخضود وطلح ممدود وظل ممدود وماء مسكوب. So sidr al-makhdud, this sidr is a type of tree, and talh is also a type of tree. So sidr is the closest transition to it is the lot. It's a tree of lot, and the sidr of this world has some thorns, and it really doesn't bear very much fruit. However, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, when he called it was sidr al-makhdud, makhdud in the Arabic language, which means that the thorns are removed. So what does it mean? So we're talking about the trees in the hereafter. So you have to remember that all descriptions that we are talking about, it's not exactly how it is. The only thing that's connection is just the words, but just to give us a bit of an image of what is there. And so the connection between what we have in the world and the hereafter should be there. But all the things that are considered a defect or prevent us from enjoying those things is removed in the hereafter. So for example, the thorns in this tree, there's no thorns in the hereafter. Because thorns generally kind of perk us, they hurt us, or prevent us from reaching a certain thing, or a tree, or a fruit. These are removed. And talh mamdud, many of the mufassirin have differed on the meaning of talh, but a lot of them had described it as mawz, banana, right? Mamdud, which means that it is almost layered, right? So layered fruits of bananas. So we are just generally mentioning, the point of this is to mention that in the Quran there's mentioned different types of fruits, different types of trees, and the details of it essentially we can go into a bit. However, when we talk about these fruits, we have to understand once again the pleasure in the hereafter is more complete. There's no reduction or anything. This is why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala when he says ukuluha da'im, right, that its food is continuous. When we think of fruits and trees or crops, we always think seasonal. Is that right? Yes. All fruits are seasonal at one point or another. So dates, they have a season. Banana has a season. Apple has a season. Raspberry, strawberry, all these. However, in the hereafter, there is no seasonal things. It's continuous. And there's like, the tree doesn't bear fruit at one point and it doesn't bear fruit at another point. No, it continuously bears fruit. So this is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, وَفَاكِهَةٍ كَثِيرًا لَا مَقْطُوعَةٍ وَلَا مَمْنُوعَةٍ, right? لَا مَقْطُوعَةٍ, which means it doesn't stop, وَلَا مَمْنُوعَةٍ, you're not prohibited from it. Right? Like, it's not too high or anything like that. In fact, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, وَذُلِّلَتْ قُطُوفُهَا تَذْلِيلًا, which means it has been brought down to you that you're able to grasp it very easily. And so this is just from the bounties and pleasures of the hereafter. And so the fruits are abundant, they're neither limited nor are they forbidden. So they're not limited to season and they're not forbidden. And yes, we do know from the description that these trees obviously have branches and so forth. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, وَلِمَنْ خَافَ مَقَامَ رَبِّهِ جَنَّتَانِ فَبِأَيِّ آلَاءِ رَبِّكُمَا تُكَذِّبَانِ ذَوَاتَا أَفْنَانٍ. Right? What does أفنان mean? أغصان متشابكة, right? Which means intertwined branches, right? ذَوَاتَا أَفْنَانٍ. But also even in the other description of the Jannah, the ones that's lesser to it, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala called it mudhammatan, right? What does mudhammatan mean? طيب, anybody can answer except Sister Huda. MashaAllah, ربنا يبارك فيكم. That's true, right? Which means it's darkened because of how green it is. Because that's what it means, right? Mudhammatan, which means the greenery. So dark green in color. And we talked about how close it is to grab when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, which means that the fruits to be picked will be lowered in compliance. Right? So this is called tazleel, lowered in compliance. So even the trees, subhanAllah, in the Jannah, they want to give you its fruits. And this is one of the bounties of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in Jannah. Now in terms of the description of specific trees, there have been verses in the Quran and even in the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ of naming specific descriptions about the tree, but even names. So some of the description is that the description of the tree or one of the trees, which in terms of its shadow, of how it extends, when the Prophet ﷺ, when he mentioned was it Isra al-Mi'raj? I can't remember. I think it might have been Isra al-Mi'raj. When he was talking to Jibreel alayhi salam, but this is also other descriptions. So when the Prophet ﷺ was talking about the greatness of how huge this tree is and how it would take a person who is mounting a horse, and not just any horse, a horse that has been prepared for racing and going its full speed, it would take him 100 years to cross its shade. Not even then, it will take him probably more than 100 years to cross its shade. And so this narrated by Imam Bukhari al-Muslim from Abu Sa'id al-Khudri radiallahu anhu. So the Prophet ﷺ said, إِنَّ فِي الْجَنَّةِ شَجَرَةً لا شجرة إن في الجنة لا شجرة يسير الراكب الجواد المضمر. Right? So al-jawad is talking about over here the fastest of horses. Al-mudmar is a description for when you prepare a horse to be light and strong. So there's different descriptions of how that happens, whether you lighten his food or you put more weight, mount on it so it can get more muscle. But the description, the point of it is a strong horse. Whatever has to go to become lighter and stronger. So it can be very fast. So he said, الجواد المضمر السريع 100 عام وما يقطعها. So he travels 100 years and he does not pass it. So this is just the shade of one of the trees in Jannah. And then in another narration, the Prophet ﷺ said, so this is Sahih Bukhari and Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu, he said, إِنَّ فِي الْجَنَّةِ لَشَجَرَةً يَسِيرُ الرَّاكِبُ فِي ظِلِّهَا 100 سَنَةً وَقْرَأُوا إِن شِئْتُمْ وَظِلٍّ مَمْدُودٍ. Right? An extended shade. So he said that there's a tree in Jannah that the person cannot pass even if he travels on his mount, the horse, for 100 years. Read if you recite, if you will. وَظِلٍّ مَمْدُودٍ, an extended shadow. Right? Dhil, which means the shadow that is given by the tree. So this is in terms of the shadow. Now, one of the names that's been given in the tree, we know one of the trees in Jannah is Sidrat al-Muntaha. Right? And this is what surah this is? Sidrat al-Muntaha. عندها جنة المأوى. An-Najm. Right? So that's surah al-Najm. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is describing this tree in the hereafter, when the Prophet ﷺ had seen this in Isra al-Mi'raj, and he said عندها جنة المأوى, which means it's close to near the garden, right, of refuge. Al-Ma'wa, which is refuge, the garden of refuge, which is referring to paradise. So one of the names of it is called Sidra. And in the hadith, the Prophet ﷺ said, ثُمَّ انطَلَقَ بِي, which means that Jibreel alayhi salam had took the Prophet ﷺ until he reached the Sidrat al-Muntaha. And then he described it, right? He said, وَنَبْقُهَا مِثْلَ قِلَالِ هَجَرٍ. Nabquha, which means it's fruits, where the fruit that it has, كَمِثْلَ قِلَالِ هَجَرٍ. So Hajar is a place close to Medina, and Qilal is a big, huge container that they used to be able to carry. The rough estimate is it kind of carries approximately anywhere between 190 to 200 liters, which I cannot remember in the US system what it is. I just remember the metric system. So if somebody wants to calculate how many gallons, so a gallon is about 2.78 liters, approximately. No, 3.78? 3.78, right? No, 2.78. 3.78? Are you sure? I think it's 2.7. I can't remember. A gallon is how many liters?
3.75, isn't it?
No, not 4 point. That's way too high. So either 2.78 or 3.7. 3.78. Okay, so 3.78. So 1 gallon is 3.78 liters. So this is about 200 liters approximately. So we can estimate how many gallons it is. So roughly it's about almost like, 190 gallons approximately? Rough, give or take. We'll say 200 if you want, 200 gallons. That's one qulla, right? So it's that size that can carry. So it's the fruit of it is just that big. And then he says, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, وَرَقُوهَا مِثْلُ أَذَانِ الْفِيَلَةِ, right? And its leaf is the size of the elephant's ear. تَكَادُ الْوَرَقُ تُغَطِّي هَذِهِ الْأُمَّةِ, that the waraqa, which is the one leaf, is to cover this entire almost nation. فَغَشِيهَا أَلْوَانْ لَا أَدْرِ مَا هِيَ, and it has colorations that I don't know what these colors are. So it's telling us even in Jannah, the colors that exist in Jannah are not even the types of colors that we're used to. Now you have to remember everything in Jannah, when the Prophet ﷺ said, وَلَا عَيْنٌ رَأَتْ وَلَا أُذُنٌ سَمِعَتْ وَلَا خَطَرَ عَلَى قَلْبِ بَشَرٍ. Like an eye has not seen, or ear has not heard of, or even crossed our minds or the heart of a human being. So it's completely different. So the Prophet ﷺ himself, he says, there's colors that I cannot even describe. Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. He says, ثُمَّ أُدْخِلْتُ الْجَنَّةِ, so I entered into Jannah. فَإِذَا فِيهَا جَنَابِذِ اللُّؤْلُؤِ, and in it there's janabith. Janabith is جمع جنبوذ, which is al-qubba. Qubba is the, how do you say qubba? You know the top of the masjid? Dome, thank you, that's the word, dome, right? A dome is made out of pearls. وَإِذَا تُرَابُهَا الْمِسْكَ, and we mentioned this before, its sand is made out of musk, which means the fragrance of it is musk. So this is one of the description of trees. Now another tree is called tuba. It's called what? Tuba. And this comes from a hadith from Abu Sa'id al-Khudri radiyallahu anhu, and this is Musnad Imam Ahmed, you'll find this. So a man came to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He said, Ya Rasulullah, Tuba liman ra'aka wa amana bika. Right? He said, Tuba is for a person who saw you and he believed in you. And so the Prophet ﷺ said, Tuba liman ra'ani wa amana bi. Right? Tuba, so whoever has seen me and believed in me. And then he said, Thumma Tuba, Thumma Tuba, Thumma Tuba. So he said 3 times, Tuba, for who? Liman amana bi wa lam yarani. So whomever believes in me, he did not see me, right? Because this requires a bit more of strength of iman and faith. Because when you see the Prophet ﷺ, although seeing the Prophet ﷺ doesn't necessarily it means you're going to be a believer, right? Because we know people, including the family of the Prophet ﷺ, some family members such as Abu Lahab, his uncles and so forth, even Abu Talib, he lived with the Prophet ﷺ, he supported the Prophet ﷺ, but still did not become a believer. But still, not seeing the Prophet ﷺ, it's almost we have a bit of a reduction. We long to see the Prophet ﷺ. We need to, the pleasure of meeting the Prophet ﷺ. So the Prophet ﷺ said, Tuba, 3 of it for a person who believed in me and did not see it. And then the Prophet ﷺ was asked, وَمَا Tuba? What is Tuba? This Arab Bedouin is saying Tuba, and you, Prophet ﷺ, are saying Tuba 3 times. So the Prophet said, قَالَ شَجَرَةٌ فِي الْجَنَّةِ, right? شجرة في الجنة مسيرة 100 عام. Its walking distance is 100 years. ثياب أهل الجنة تخرج من أكمامها. Right, the clothing of the people of Jannah comes out from its akmam, which is, you know how when the fruit opens, right? That's called al-akmam. It comes out of it. So this is a tree where the clothing of people of Jannah comes out of it, right? Whether it's silk or otherwise. Allah Alam. So that's a tree called Tuba, and now we also know where the clothing of people of Jannah can come from. It is from that tree. Alright, about the tree trunks. So what are they made out of? The trunk of the tree, right? So siqan al-shajar. So what's it made out of? You have an answer? Do you know? She doesn't have an answer?
I don't think so.
Not yet?
Not yet.
طيب. Inshallah she will. When she sees it, inshallah in Jannah. Say Ameen. طيب, what's it made out of? I see a hand. Come on, guys. Noor Iman students should know this. What's the tree of Jannah, the trunk, what's it made out of?
Gold.
Gold. No, you're not Noor Iman. It's true, it's made out of gold. Right, so Prophet ﷺ had said, this is by Imam Tirmidhi and Ibn Hibban. So Abu Hurairah said, ما في الجنة شجرة إلا وساقوها من ذهب. Right, there is no tree in Jannah, but its trunk, it's made out of gold. All right, so here's a question. So obviously we know there's trees in Jannah. We know that people have houses and palaces and tents in Jannah. We described that. We also talked about how can people attain a palace in Jannah. But you'd want to populate your Jannah with trees, right? Yes?
Yes.
So how do you do that? Subhanallah al-Azim bihamdi. That's true. Right? That is gharus al-Jannah. And this comes from the hadith from Prophet ﷺ, obviously, but also from a beautiful hadith when Ibrahim alayhi salam told the Prophet ﷺ when he was in Isra and Miraj, he said, no, he said, Ya Muhammad, aqri ummataka as-salam, right? Ardun tayyiba, right? What does adbat al-qi'an mean?
You said it before, but
I did?
Yeah.
Adbat al-qi'an, what does that mean? In another narration, وَأَنَّهَا qi'an, right? So the narration is أرض طيبة التربة عذبة الماء وأنها قيعان وأنها غرسها سبحان الله والحمد لله ولا إله إلا الله والحمد لله إلا الله والله أكبر, right? And so essentially a description of the Jannah, but he said وأرضها قيعان, قيعان, which means it is fertile, okay? جاهزة للغرس, right? So it's for plantation. And he said, and it's planting it, to plant something in it, it's to say, La ilaha illallah, subhanallah, walhamdulillah, wa la ilaha illallah, wallahu akbar. Right, so the tasbih and the tahleel and praising Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, this is how we plant these in Jannah. And so this is why the more we say this, the better, the more the reward is. And so qi'an over here, it says it's fertile and it needs to be planted. So does it mean that there's no trees in Jannah yet? There is. But there's more room, right? There's more room for plantation. In fact, that Allah Alam, some of the scholars says that the trees that are planted because of our actions are more beautiful than the trees that were planted before. Allah Alam. So some of the scholars mentioned that. All right, so if there's trees, there's fruits, we know there's definitely meat and there's definitely, well, meat from birds and other things, because we recite in verses in the Quran, وَلَحْمِ طَيْرٍ مِمَّا يَشْتَهُونَ, right? وَحُرٌ عِينٍ. And then other verses from the Quran, subhanAllah, it's slipping my mind. It's talking about also, like, meat. I can't remember, it slipped my mind. I know, this is the one I mentioned, وَحُرٌ عِينٍ. But there's another verse. SubhanAllah, it's slipping my mind. I'll get it, inshallah. Hopefully, inshallah, I'll remember it. But anyway, so obviously there's some sort of meat. So there's birds and so forth. So I'm going to mention about 3 hadith, inshallah, involved with this. And so there are mounts. So dawab. Dawab is anything that usually... So by the way, dawab in the Arabic language is anything that puts foot on the ground. So technically we are dawab. However, many accustomedly based on culture, dawab is usually now referring to things such as cattle, right, and sheep and all these things. So this is generally referred to as dawab. But there is dawab, there's tuyur, khuyul, and so forth. And it's obviously not the same as the one, once again, we have on earth. It's a completely different description. So for example, in terms for the khayl and al-ibil, and this is narrated by Imam Tirmidhi rahimahullah, Sulaiman ibn Buraidah, based on his father, a man came to the Prophet ﷺ and he asked, Ya Rasulullah, hal fil Jannah min khayl, right? Is there any steeds, right, or horses in Jannah? So the Prophet ﷺ said, if Allah allows you to enter Jannah, in adkhalaka Allahu al-Jannah, فلا تشاء أن تحمل, right? We did not will to be carried upon a mount. تحمل على خيل تحمل فيها على فرس. You be carried on it on a mount and a steed. What's it made out of? من ياقوت حمراء. Right? This steed is made out of red ruby. Okay. يطير بك, that it flies with you. So which means that it also has wings. Right? So it's not exactly as a horse that we imagine in this world. It's completely different. يطير بك في الجنة حيث تشئت. Right? It flies with you in Jannah wherever you will. And so another man asked him, فَقْسَأَلَهُ رَجُلْ يَا رَسُولَ اللَّهِ هَلْ فِي الْجَنَّةِ مِنْ إِبِلٍ? Is there any camels in Jannah? And so he did not say like the other person that it has one that flies and so forth, but the Prophet ﷺ said, إِنْ يُدْخِلَكَ اللَّهُ الْجَنَّةِ, if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will allow you to enter the Jannah, يَكُنْ لَكَ فِيهَا مَشْتَهَتْ, you'd have what you desire from it, وَلَذَّتْ عَيْنُكَ, from whatever you desire. So which means that all of the things that we desire, because you have to remember back then, horses and camels were considered a commodity. Right? There was something of beauty and something that you want to have and desire. And so it's very common that, or normal, that we desire something like this in the hereafter, if this is what we're after. And so the Prophet ﷺ just said a general term. He said you'd have whatever you desire in it. Now I know, like, younger kids, they would say, like, Baba, if I wish for a Ferrari or Lamborghini, will I have it in Jannah, right? And my thought process is like, subhanAllah, I don't know if you'd even wish for that, but Allah A'lam, if you desire something, it will happen, right? Of course, the inclination will change later on. Now in another hadith, also by Imam al-Tirmidhi, and this is by Abu Ayyub, he came to, he said, an Arabi came to the Prophet ﷺ, and he said, Ya Rasulullah, inni uhibbu al-khayla, afil jannati khayl. I love horses, is there going to be any horses in Jannah? So the Prophet ﷺ said, in adkhalaka al-jannah, atayta bifaras min yaquta lahu janahan, fahumilta alayhi. So if you enter Jannah, you'll have a horse made of ruby, he has wings. ثم طار بك حيث شئت. So this is another narration. Now in terms of camels, there's another narration also that shows that how much camels we have. Is that, so this is narrated by Sahih Imam Muslim, rahimahullah. When a person came with a camel that makhtuma, which means it has its, what do you call it? You know the things you pull the animal with when you ride it? I forgot what's it called. Harness. Is it? No, the harness is what you put on its back, right? I know lijam, but what's it called in English? I forgot. But anyway, the thing on its mouth he used to pull with, which means that it's been tamed, right? That it's like, it will obey its owner. So he came with it and he said, Ya Rasulullah, right? This is for fi sabilillah, right? This is for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So the Prophet ﷺ said, for you, لَكَ بِهَ يَوْمَ الْقِيَامَةِ 700 نَاقَةٌ كُلَّهَا مَخْطُومَةٌ. So for you with it in the hereafter, there's 700 camels. All of them are also makhtuma, right? Which means they've been trained, they've been for you in the Jannah, which tells you that in Jannah there are camels also. Now some scholars say it might mean that you'd have the reward of 700 camels, but many of the scholars says they indicate that there are camels. So يحتمل أن يكون ظاهرها يعني, which means as a statement, which is usually we take things as they come along. All right, now the third one I'm going to mention is the ghanam, right? Ghanam, which is referring to goats and sheep. So they are also from Dawab al-Jannah. The Prophet ﷺ, and so this is in Sunan Ibn Majah, Ibn Umar radiallahu anhu, he said that the Prophet ﷺ said, Ash-shah min Dawab al-Jannah, right? Ash-shah, which refers to both goats and sheep, they are from the animals of Jannah, right? They are from the animals of Jannah. Now in terms of the birds of Jannah, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and he mentioned this also by Imam Tirmidhi rahimahullah, when the Prophet ﷺ was talking about al-Kawthar. He said, when he's talking about al-Kawthar and a person will ask him what it is, he said, Nahrun azim, like a huge river, أشد بياضا من اللبن وأحلى من العسل. And then he said, فيها طير, in it there is birds, أعناقها كأعناق الجزر, that its necks are big as the camels. قال عمر إن هذه لناعمة, right? So Ibn Umar said إن هذه لناعمة, which means ناعمة over here referring to that it is very large. Because if a bird has a neck that is as big as a camel, how big is the bird? right? So it's telling these are large, filled with meat, birds large with meat. And the Prophet ﷺ said, أكلتها أحسن منها, right? Which means that its taste is more tasty than how big it is. Wallahu alam. So these are birds in Jannah. Alright, so now we talked about the trees, we talked about the fruits, we talked about the animals in Jannah, the birds in Jannah. So the next thing we're going to talk about is how do we attain it, right? Because everybody by now, I'm hoping they want to attain Jannah. So the question is how easy it is. How easy is it? Maryam, is it easy? In theory. سهلة لمن سهل الله عليه. May Allah make it easy for all of us. But the reality is the Prophet ﷺ has said, ألا إن سلعة الله غالية, ألا إن سلعة الله غالية, ألا إن سلعة الله غالية, أن سلعة الله الجنة, right? The Prophet ﷺ said that the merchandise of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is expensive. The merchandise of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is expensive. The merchandise of Allah is expensive. It is Jannah. So there's a trade, a transaction, a payment that has to be put forth. But another hadith, the Prophet ﷺ had said, there's two narrations. So this is Sahih Bukhari Muslim. The one in Bukhari is حجبت الجنة بالمكاره وحجبت النار بالشهوات. And the one in Sahih Muslim حفت الجنة بالمكاره وحفت النار بالشهوات. So one narration is that Jannah is concealed, right, with things that we dislike. The other narration is Jannah has been surrounded with things we disliked. On the hellfire, it has been concealed or surrounded with things that have been concealed or surrounded with desirable things. Desires. Shahawat, which are desires. So what this means is that for us to enter, the way to enter Jannah or the way to enter hellfire, right, is that to Jannah you have to go through those hardships. And those hardships, by the interpretation of the scholars, whether it's Imam al-Nawawi or other scholars, is that it is the awamir al-nawahi, right? The orders and the prohibitions, such as, like, the rules and regulations, like the praying 5 days, fasting, and all these things, because they are things that you have to do. And it goes contrary to the nature of ourself, because it's our nature to be lazy, right? And the proof for that, if somebody tells you, listen, you don't have to work a day in your life and I'll give you $1 million every year, would you take that offer? You guys are laughing.
Yes, of course.
Would anybody reject that offer?
Yes.
Would somebody say, no, I want to work, right?
No, of course not.
Mustafa, would you accept that offer or reject that offer?
Take it and relax.
What? No, you'd not take it? You take it? There would be something wrong with you if you don't take it, right? Say what?
If you get a fatwa, it's legit.
If you get a fatwa, if it's legit. No, I'm serious, right? It's like a nafs jubilat al kasar, right? It's our nature to be lazy, right? It's our nature to want things easy. And so any form of work, we consider it hardship. Even if it's getting up to to turn the TV on. This is why we have remote controls. What happens if we lose the remote control?
Oh gosh.
Especially going to Fajr.
No, wallahi, what happens? Have you ever seen a person that lost their remote control?
Like hardship when going and
They're ready to turn the entire house upside down to find that remote. Why? Because they want to turn the channel. It's kind of funny how we work. But it just points to that we are lazy, right? We lean more towards laziness. So any form of work to us is hardship. But so it tells us this Jannah, right? To be able to cross it, we have to bear these hardships. We have to be patient with it, because we desire what's afterwards, right? What's behind that veil? What's behind that veil is Jannah. Similarly, the way to attain the hellfire is to cross that veil, which is indulging in desires. Okay, things that are made perhaps even likable to us, perhaps, that we're more inclined to want to follow and indulge in. And so to be careful. But the point over here, we're talking about how to enter Jannah. The key or the way to enter Jannah is to cross that hardship, right? فَلَقْتَحَمَ الْعَقَبَةِ, right? What does aqaba mean? Not in this, well, it does include hardship, but aqaba, which means what the barrier in front of you, and a barrier is usually takes effort to cross. So they can penetrate the aqaba. What is it? فَكُّ رَقَبَةٍ أو إطعام في يوم ذي مسغبة يتيما ذا مقربة. So this is what it means. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told us, that this is you want to penetrate that barrier, go through it. So how do you do? Right? You feed the orphan, right? The poor or the needy, right? فَكُّ رَقَبَةٍ, which means that you not exonerate, but free a slave, a person who is a slave, that you free him for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But so forth, but it requires actions, and this hardship requires patience, day in and day night, so day in and day out. So this is the key to it, right? The key to entering Jannah is to be patient and work with these hardships, not to be lazy. Laziness will not give you anything. Even in this world around us, a person who's lazy will never be able to attain wealth or status or anything like that. We understand that we have to work. حسبتم what? That's ولم يأتوا مثل الذين خلوا من قبلكم, right? مستهم البأساء والضراء وزلزلوا حتى, well, to the end of it, right? But this is how it is, right? If you want something, there's a price for it, and the Prophet ﷺ said that the price of Jannah is expensive. So what is the price that we're willing to pay, right? And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the Prophet ﷺ did not conceal from us what's behind those barriers. He told us, he said, listen, behind this barrier there's Jannah, right? This is all you need to do. But if you take this track, behind it is the hellfire. So everything is quite clear. It's not that we are being deceived, and in the end it's our choice what we do. So this is how we attain Jannah. Alright, now the question comes in quite often. I'm just going to describe, because we're talking about Jannah and how hard it is. Most people ask, what are the types of people in Jannah? What's most in terms of numbers and so forth? And this is a conversation that usually goes a debate in it. But the Prophet ﷺ had several hadith that mentions, for example, the type of people that are the majority of people in Jannah, for example. So whether it's, for example, if you look at the social economical, right, the poor or the rich, which is more in Jannah, the Prophet ﷺ, he mentioned in hadith, and this is narrated by Bukhari and Muslim, he said, أَلَا أُخْبِرُكُمْ بِأَهْلِ الْجَنَّةِ, should I not tell you of the people of Jannah? So obviously the companions said, Bala, because they want to be from the people of Jannah. And he said, كُلُّ ضَعِيفٍ مُسْتَضْعَفٍ, right? كُلُّ ضَعِيفٍ مُتَضَعَفٍ, right? So every weak that is being oppressed or looked down upon, لو أقسم على الله لأبره, if he swears upon Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he would fulfill his oath. So Imam al-Nawawi rahimahullah, he said that it means that this individual, people look down upon him as if he's weak, right? They oppress him. وَيَحْتَقِرُونَهُ, right? They look down upon him. وَيَتَجَبَّرُونَ عَلَيْهِ, right? Which means that they oppress him, they climb on his shoulders. Why? Because of the weakness of his status or state in this world. And what's meant by Imam Nawawi, he said that the majority of people of Jannah are like that. But the question is why? This is just a thought process. Why is it that those people will be the majority as opposed to the person who live a luxurious life? Because what?
They weren't distracted by all the riches and
true, right? A person who has nothing,
is closer to Allah subhanahu.
although we live in an interesting world nowadays. Yes, it's true, theoretically speaking. A person who's weak and oppressed, quite often, yes, a lot of things, there's nothing to distract him. But also because of that weakness, his heart is more dependent on who? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So he's always calling upon Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He always wants to please Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He increases more in his worship and in ibadah and his true forth. I paused on the distraction because I was thinking of my last trip to Egypt. And it's amazing how even the poorest of individuals almost has 2 phones with them.
Yes.
Not 1 phone, 2 phones. And to me it was just kind of, I was said, subhanAllah, I only have 1 phone, right? Most people have 1 phone. But these individuals who are obviously not well off, but they have 2 phones. And to me that's a distraction, right? I don't understand how this happened. So that's what made me pause. But overall, yes, the person who lives a luxurious life is distracted by much of the pleasures of life. That is true. But the person who also lives a luxury quite often doesn't feel the dependence on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? This is maybe the part of the reason why we call him a person who's rich. What do we call him in Arabic? No, he's not mustaghni. We call him ghani, right? Why? Because he doesn't feel the need. And when you don't feel that need, all of a sudden your dependence on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or your feeling of the need of Allah, becomes less good. But also the mentality of those individuals who live the higher upper class is usually how?
Arrogant and
a bit of arrogance, yes. How is there,
They feel that it's me. I did.
Self-sufficient, but also themselves abiding by their religion. How is it?
No, they're not.
Not very much.
No.
Because sometimes they think of themselves about the intellectual, right? The elite class, the higher class. These things are for the old ages type of deal, right? It's not classy to wear a hijab. It's not classy to do all these things. And so you see the majority, and it's throughout history, by the way, the majority, for example, of individuals who fought against the prophets were mostly not the poor people. They're mostly the rich, right? This is why some of the scholars say al-mala, right? The word al-mala is referring maybe perhaps to the higher status, the higher class of the people at that time. This is one of the interpretations. But it's always those people are fighting because they have the most to lose, while the people who are destitute, oppressed, they don't have much to lose. Right? They just want to follow what is right. They want the justice. So the Prophet ﷺ said the majority of people are like that. Okay. Now it doesn't mean that there are no individuals who are rich or of higher class or mashallah they're obedient, because the Prophet ﷺ had mentioned in hadith that this world belongs to 4 types of individuals, right? A person who has knowledge, actually he said, is it 3 people or 4 people? Okay. A person who has wisdom and wealth, okay? And a person that doesn't have wisdom, or a person who has wisdom and wealth, a person that has only wisdom, a person who has wealth, and a person who has neither wisdom or neither wealth. Okay? The person who has wisdom and wealth is a person who will spend his wealth for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Is that right? A person who doesn't have wealth but has wisdom would say, if I would have had like what this person has, I would spend it for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Right? So these people are alike. And then the person who has
no wisdom, no money.
Wealth but no wisdom, he spends it for the opposite. Not for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but the opposite. And the person who has neither will say, if I have like him, I would spend it. Things that displease Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So a person who's rich can attain the higher statuses. Think about the companions, whether it's Uthman, Affan, or many of these scholars, or many of the Sahaba that were rich and yet would attain the highest of status in Jannah. Why? Is because their focus was not the rich and did not distract them. So yes, you can be rich and still enter Jannah, but the reality is the majority of people, the richer they become, the more luxurious, the more they're far away from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is why we should always be careful, right? No matter how much luxury we live in, not to forget our dependence on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Always where to think and remember, where did this come from? That this is something we're interested in, how we're going to use it. We're going to be asked about how did we attain it and how did we spend it. Right? And we mentioned this before in the beginning of the Day of Judgment. لا تزول قدم عبد حتى يسأل عن أربع. Right? That the feet of an individual will not move from its place until they're asked about 4 things. We talked about these things before. All right. And then in another narration by Ibn Abbas in Sahih Bukhari and Muslim, the Prophet ﷺ said, طلعت في الجنة, I looked into Jannah, فرأيت أكثر أهلها الفقراء. I saw that the majority of its people are the poor. وطلعت في النار, and I looked in the hellfire, فرأيت أكثر أهلها النساء. Which poses another problem now, another question.
Why?
Not why. Which, by the way, the Sahaba actually used to discuss is which gender is more in Jannah, right? The men or the women? You're saying men, right? I'm telling you, this debate was since the time of the companions, right? And the tabi'een, they would argue among themselves which is more larger in numbers, the women or men. Now, is there any fruit to that discussion? Is there any benefit to that discussion? Like, not really, right? Right? Not really. It's not has nothing to do with anything being like, sisters are better or no, the brothers are better. That's not the point, right? We're all the same, right? Except the only difference is, the difference between one or the other, no matter what they are, is taqwa, right? Taqwa, that's it, basically. But let's get into this interpretation, because there is, once again, that argument is from before, right? And even the Prophet ﷺ, when he told the Nisa, right, صدقنا, right, فإني رأيت أهلك الناس, right, and he said يكفرنا, and so يكفرنا, right, and so the Prophet said يكفرنا العشيرة, right, the reason behind it. But whether it is, like, Abu Hurairah, by the way, Abu Hurairah's opinion is the opposite, right? Abu Hurairah's opinion is that women are more in Jannah. Some of the Sahabas, his opinion is no, it's men in Jannah, right? Abu Hurairah, he's saying that it's more women because each man has at least 2 wives in Jannah. So for that to happen, there has to be more
In Jannah.
But the hadith of Prophet said
It's more of them in hell.
in the hellfire, which means that there is more men in
Yeah, in Jannah.
Tayyib.
Yeah.
But what if it's just because that there's fewer men anyway? Right? You remember that one of the things on the Day of Judgment is that prior to the sign of the Day of Judgment that there's more number of females than there are men. So if there's generally more sisters, more females, right, then it would make sense that here will be more and here will be more, right? Not necessarily, right? It's just fewer in the case. Some of the scholars said that. But Imam al-Qurtubi, rahimahullah, was it Ibn Hajar al-Asqalani? So Ibn Hajar, I think it's Ibn Hajar al-Asqalani. So he said to combine between all the hadiths, he said, النساء أكثر أهل النار وأكثر أهل الجنة. He said they're both. He said the females, and he said are the majority of people of the hellfire and the majority of people of the Jannah. وبذلك يكون أكثر من الرجال وجودا في الخلق, which is what I mentioned, right? That they already are, like, just in numbers, in sheer numbers, there's just more females. Okay? If there's 1 billion females and 1 million men, no matter what you do, if you look here, there'll be more females. If you look here, there'll be more females. So he said, so Ibn Hajar described that. That's one of the interpretations. Imam al-Qurtubi, rahimahullah, the way he combined it is he said that النساء يكن أكثر النار قبل الشفاعة, right? So he's talking about the Muslim women. He said they will be in the hellfire, but this is before the shafa'ah, right? And before them coming out of the hellfire and entering Jannah. And so once this happened, once they enter Jannah, then they become more than the men. So the men prior to that are more, but after that they will be more women. That's the other interpretation. Is that understood?
No, because wouldn't the shafa'ah be equally for both gender? Why would
No, but because this is based on the hadith that there is more of them in the hellfire. Why yakfurna al-ashir? Do you know what yakfurna al-ashir means? So which means lam ara khayran minna qat. The minute there is, like, a moment of anger or a moment of, like, being upset, the first thing that says you've never done anything good, good for me in your life, type of deal, right? So yakfurna al-ashir, right? They deny all the goodness that happened, and this is almost like, the case that happens, and so it's a form of sin. And so because of these accumulations, but whatever the type is, whatever the reason is, the Prophet said that there will be more in the hellfire. So that being said, if there are more, there's shafa'ah, right? And if they're Muslims, eventually they'll come out. Whether it's shafa'ah or otherwise. That's the shafa'ah, it's equal to both. But if they're more in the first place, so we're saying if after the shafa'ah and after they all come out of the hellfire, after being punished with the ma'asi, it doesn't mean that there's only females in the hellfire. No, there's men and females, just numbers are more. And so once they all come out and enter Jannah, now they're going to be more than the men. So Ibn Hajar kind of combined it, but there's once again different interpretations of how to combine it. But once in the end, there is no benefit substance as an individual in this, right? As an individual, the only thing we should be concerned about is obeying Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? Whatever gender you are makes no difference because we are equally responsible in obeying Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. All right, now if we're talking about men and women, what about the children? I know we touched on this before, but the children that passed away when they were young, right? So free pass, huh? All right, is there a difference between the children of the believers and the children of the non-believers?
No, they're all the same.
How are they all the same?
They're not accountable, and for that they're not accountable till maturity.
Okay, maturity, that's fine.
Yeah.
But because we know their parents are going to be All right, so there is an agreement that the children of the Muslims will be in Jannah. Children of Muslim parents will be in Jannah. There's a consensus about this. Because the Prophet ﷺ said, إِنَّ الْمُسْلِمِينَ وَأَلَدُونَ فِي الْجَنَّةِ. Right? And then he said, مَا مِن مُسْلِمٍ يَمُوتُ لَهُمَا ثَلَاثَ مِنَ الْوَلَدِ. Right? Two children will die as young children. لَمْ يَبْلُغُ الْحِنْثِ, which means they did not reach the age of puberty to acquire any sin. إِلَّا أَدْخَلَهُمُ اللَّهُ الْجَنَّةِ وَإِيَّاهُمْ بِفَضْلِ رَحْمَتِهِ. Right? وَإِيَّاهُمْ بِفَضْلِ رَحْمَةِ الْجَنَّةِ. إِلَّا أَدْخَلَهُمْ بِفَضْلِ رَحْمَتِهِ الْجَنَّةِ. So 3 children when they die, right? That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will allow them to enter Jannah. But another narration kind of clarifies it. The Prophet ﷺ said about the children, he called them صِغَارُهُمْ ضَعَامِيسِ الْجَنَّةِ. Right? So du'amis is almost like a creature that just inhabits waters. So he's saying that the children of the believers, they're inhabitants of Jannah, and they don't leave similar to how these things are in Jannah. يَتَلَقَّى أَحَدُهُمْ أَبَاهُ أَوْ أَبَوَيْهِ. They will meet one of their parents or one of their parents, and they would grab their clothing, right, and they would not let it go until they enter Jannah. Right? So this tells us that they're in Jannah. But also, if they're going to be a source of shafa'ah for the parents, the only way this would happen is if they are already in Jannah, or they're meant to enter Jannah. So this is why there's an agreement upon this. Imam Ahmed, he's narrated that the Prophet ﷺ said, ذَرَارِ الْمُسْلِمِينَ فِي الْجَنَّةِ. Right? فِي الْجَنَّةِ تَكَفَّلَهُ إِبْرَاهِيم. You remember when Ibrahim a.s. was seen with children around him? Right? So those are the children of the believers. So this is why there's a bit of a consensus that the believers of the Muslims, the children of Muslim parents, will enter Jannah. However, what about the disbelievers? The children of the disbelievers?
Are they going to be tested first before we're going to...
Okay. They're going to be tested, is that right? Yes?
Children should not be listed. It's not accountable for anything.
There is a debate.
I believe they're going to be tested first.
If they're not in the
Either
case,
if they chose the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they're going to go in Jannah. If they
But
rejected
they
it.
don't even know. They don't even have enough knowledge.
طيب. I'm going to tell you a narration in Sahih al-Bukhari regarding the children around Ibrahim alayhi salam. So the narration says that أَمَّا الْوِلْدَانَ الَّذِينَ حَوْلَهُ, the children around him, he said فَكُلُّ مَوْلُودٍ يُولَدُ عَلَى الْفِطْرَةِ.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right? كُلُّ مَوْلُودٍ يُولَدُ عَلى الْفِطْرَةِ. فقال بعض المسلمين وأولاد المشركين, and the children of the disbelievers, he said فقال وأولاد المشركين. Right? And so this narration is by Imam Bukhari. Ibn Hajar al-Asqalani mentioned it. And so the way Imam Bukhari was dealing with this, he kind of almost was leaning to stopping, but also leaning. But there is another opinion. Right? So I'm just telling you there is a difference in opinion. So one of the opinions is that yes, they're going to be in Jannah. And then because there's another narration, there's a dispute about authenticity, but some say it's authentic. And it's narrated by Imam Ibn Manda, that the Prophet ﷺ said that أطفال المشركين خدموا أهل الجنة. Right? That the children of the disbelievers are like the small servants of Ahl al-Jannah. So that is one opinion, is that no, they will enter Jannah. Okay? A lot of scholars mention this, whether it's Ibn al-Jawzi, and I think this is the official position of the Hanbali school of thought. Right? Because even the official opinion of the Hanbali school of thought is that even the disbeliever, the adult, who does not reach the message of Islam, does not reach him, then he's entering Jannah.
Exactly.
The other opinion by some of the other scholars is what was mentioned. Shaykh Mohamed over here, he said like, no, that will be tested. It is true, right? One of the opinions of the scholars, and if I remember correctly, this is the opinion of Imam Taymiyyah and of quite a few other scholars, that they will be tested, right? It will be told to them, like, jump into the fire or jump into this water, or jump into the fire. It will be tested, like, to jump into the fire. If they jump, they would enter Jannah. If they don't jump, then they would enter the hellfire. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would order them, right? Because they'll say, like, I have not reached the message. Why am I going to be punished? Am I going to be punished? So they would have their own test. That is the other opinion that's there. So I'm just pointing out both opinions are there. But the majority of scholars are on the opinion that they would enter Jannah. especially the children. Yes? What's the question?
No, I thought the testing is for the adults who didn't reach the message, who didn't get the message. But if you're a child, they didn't have the knowledge to know what's given. If they died as babies, for example, I mean, they didn't even reach what is it called?
All right, the reason they're saying that is because the Prophet ﷺ, when he was asked one time, he said, Allahu a'lamu bima kanu amilin. Allah knows what they were going to be doing. Which means they could enter Jannah or they could enter the hellfire. I'm just telling you how deep sometimes the argument is. Right? It's all based on the hadith and how you interpret it. But once again, the majority of scholars, they lean towards that they would enter Jannah. Okay? Based on more of clear narrations.
But is there anyone the message really didn't reach him?
Sorry?
There are people really the message didn't reach them?
Yes, well, it is possible. Wallahu alam. It includes people who have gotten the message in a distorted way. It includes people who have received the message in a distorted way. So, because when a message comes to me distorted, it's the same thing as it never reached me.
It's true.
Right? Same thing, same conclusion. Because if it didn't reach me, I'm not going to follow it. If I get negative information, bad information about it, distorted, I'm not going to follow it. Right? So it's the same result. But once again, there is a difference in opinion between the scholars about this. Okay? Wallahu alam, which one is true. But it's just there. Now I'm going to end with this, the amount so many of the scholars, they title this in the books of longer books of Aqidah. They talk like, مقدار ما يدخل الجنة من هذه الأمة, right? The amount of people that would enter Jannah from this ummah. Okay, so the sheer number of, they would enter Jannah. So this is also based on several ahadith that the Prophet ﷺ essentially indicates that the majority of the people of Jannah would be from his ummah. Okay, the majority of people that enter Jannah will be from this ummah. Although in terms of numbers, overall numbers, the Prophet ﷺ described it that we are like the white hair on the back of a black, is it bull?
Yeah.
Thawr, bull, right? Or a black hair on the body of a white bull, which means throughout history there's billions and billions of human beings. If you count the number of people from the ummah of the Prophet ﷺ, they're naturally less in number. Is that right? However, they will be the majority of the people inhabitants of Jannah. Because the Prophet ﷺ, during his trip of Isra and Mi'raj, when he said, he saw the messenger, وَكَانَ مَعَهُ رَجُلٌ وَرَجُلَيْن, right? Some messengers had only one or two people. وَرَجُلٌ مَعَهُ رَهْتُ, which means a group of 10 or a bit more. And then he said, I looked up and I saw sawad, right? I saw darkness. So I thought it was my ummati, but Jibreel told him, he said, no, this is the followers of Musa alayhi salam, but look over there at a distance, فَإِذَا سَوَادٌ أَعْظَمُ, right? A greater number of people are there, and he said that this is your people. In another hadith, the Prophet ﷺ said that I hope that you would be وَالَّذِي نَفْسِي بِيَدِي إِنِّي أَرْجُو أَن تَكُونَ رُبْعَ أَهْلِ الْجَنَّةِ, I hope that you be a quarter of the people of Jannah. And so obviously, the Sahaba فَكَبَّرْنَا, they said Allahu Akbar. And then he said, أَرْجُو أَن تَكُونُوا ثُلُثَ أَهْلِ الْجَنَّةِ, I hope that you are a third of the people of Jannah. And so they kabbaru. And then he said, أَرْجُو أَن تَكُونُوا نِصْفَ أَهْلِ الْجَنَّةِ, right? At least you are half of the Day of Judgment. But for us to understand why is it that we are larger, smaller in number, yet the followers of the Prophet ﷺ are more? This is an interesting question, is that right? Isn't this interesting?
So what's the question?
The question is, why is it that overall, in terms of throughout human history, we are the smallest in number? Because we're the last of ummahs. There's multiple ummahs before us. And so in terms of we are the last ummah, so our number is naturally smaller than if you count the previous ummahs before us. Okay? But yet, the Prophet ﷺ has more followers than any other messenger. To the point that half of the people in Jannah will be Muslims. Or from the followers of the Prophet ﷺ. Why is that?
How do us more because we don't know when history will end. I mean, we don't know when is the day of judgment.
Because the Prophet ﷺ said, "Ma antum fi nasi," you as my nation, right? In another nation, "Ma antum fi nasi fil mahshar," right? You are among the people on the day of judgment. So when all the people are gathered on the day of judgment, your numbers compared to those people, right? كالشعرة السوداء في جلد ثور أبيض. So this is how we know that our numbers.
Even at the end.
So this is at the day of judgment, okay? So sorry. So our numbers on the day of judgment, right? When Allah gathers all of humanity, our number is going to be like the white hair on the the black hair on the white bull, right? كشعرة السواء في جلد ثور أبيض. أو he said أو كشعرة بيضاء في جلد ثور أسود. So either like the black hair on the white bull or the white hair on the black bull. But generally, for a bull to be black, which means the majority of the hair is black, right? And there's only a few white. So he's saying your numbers on the day of judgment is like that.
But isn't the hadith when they say like وفاء السير I mean قلة, and he said no, so we're not قلة, we're
At that point of time.
Okay.
But let's gather all humanity throughout history on the day of judgment.
If we look at the...
No, by the way, that hadith does not mean that we will be the majority.
Yes, ma'am.
This hadith just means, are we going to be overcome because of small in numbers? He will say, no, you have no problems with numbers. There's a lot of you, right? So for example, now at time there's a lot of Muslims. Is that right? Yeah. How many Muslims are in the world?
1.6 billion.
Whatever, 1.6 billion. That's a lot of people. Is that right or not? Yeah. So we have large numbers. It doesn't mean that we're the majority of human beings. It doesn't mean that.
Looking
Yes.
to the verse of the Prophet ﷺ as the first sign of the day of judgment, like this is linked also in close.
Say it again. Oh yeah, okay. You're talking about time span. Yes, time span. But still, my question stands. Here's my question. How is it that the Prophet ﷺ, even though we're the fewest in numbers in terms of all of humanity, the Prophet ﷺ will still have the largest number of followers? And the half of Jannah will be from the followers of the Prophet ﷺ. The other half is from the rest of the people who followed their prophets. Why is that?
Sorry.
What's the question?
طيب.
I mean, the other prophets will have...
Obviously, Jannah is not only for the followers of the Prophet ﷺ.
Right.
Okay? So if half of the Jannah are the followers of the Prophet, means the other half are from who?
The rest of the prophets.
Good, the rest of the prophets. So how many prophets were there?
So many.
A lot.
Thousands.
Which means that there are the inhabitants of Jannah are occupied by more of the followers of the Prophet ﷺ. So my question is, why, even though our number in humanity is small, yet the Prophet ﷺ has the majority of followers?
Population is increasing over time. So as population increasing, number ratio overall percentage-wise, Muslims are more. So if you look at per population, that's 20% Muslims right now. That basically means delta.
That's a nice theory. No, he's correct, but
He's the Nabi of the Akhir Zaman.
he is the Prophet last, but you're forgetting that there's thousands of prophets before that that have been on earth for a longer time span, which means technically there should be more followers.
But weren't they sent to specific
Sorry?
populations while the Prophet
direct
ﷺ was
quotient.
sent to all humanity? I mean, weren't like each one sent
I
to
know,
how many?
yes, that's why you'd have more than one prophet at the same time.
So each one would have smaller qawm.
But many
Good,
have
but there's many of them.
But many have no followers, though.
24,000.
There's a lot of them.
Is it because of the Quran being revealed?
Excellent. It's not just that. The Prophet ﷺ had mentioned that, so this is narrated by Sahih Bukhari Muslim, right? And he said, "Ma min nabi," right? There isn't a prophet. إِلَّا قَدْ أُعْطَى مِنَ الْآيَاتِ. He's been given from the signs, right? مَا مِثْلُهُ آمَنَ عَلَيْهِ الْبَشَرُ. Right? These are signs and miracles that prove their prophethood, which people have believed in. And he said, وَإِنَّمَا كَانَ الَّذِي أُوتِيتْ وَحْيًا يُوحَى إِلَيْهِ. But I've been brought, my miracle that I've been brought was the wahy, revelation, which is what? The Quran, right? وَأَرْجُ أَنْ أَكُونَ أَكْثَرَهُمْ تَابِعًا يَوْمَ الْقِيَامَةِ. And I want, I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, I hope that I am the one that has the most followers. Why? Because the Quran is a miracle that did not end. Does that make sense? Because even after the death of the Prophet, you're right, they died. But after their death, there is no more miracle of that Prophet. So the people that follow quite often are a bit less, or even if they increase a certain amount. But the Quran in itself is a lasting miracle until the Day of Judgment. And as long as it's here, it's a source of miracle. Whoever really looks at it and reads it, quite often a lot of people become Muslims because of that. Ask a lot of people why did they become Muslims. A lot of it has to do with the Quran one way or another.
That's what the opposite. The more followers, right?
Yes, there will be more followers, right? Because the Prophet ﷺ, what he was given as an evidence, right, was the Quran, something that will last until the Day of Judgment, right? This is the reason behind it. Wallahu a'lam. All right, we're gonna stop here, inshallah, because I think we went over time. So next time we're going to talk about some of the people that we know for sure are in Jannah, right? So that's Sadat Ahl al-Jannah, like, you know, from the men and the females and the children and Asharun Bashareen and all these things, inshallah. جزاكم الله خير. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك.